Hello once again. Bet you don't recognize me. I'm incognito. It's me, it's Dusty Tables. You knew that. Last time we met, I talked about a tale from time I was about 19 years old. Let's go further back in time today. A little backstory has to happen. You gotta set this up. 1930s, and before my extended family, the Tables family, lived and came from a very remote rural part of Middle Tennessee to the west of Nashville. They studied in school what were called at the time the 3 R's. That's reading, writing, and Route 41, northbound. Came about 1940, and they hit the road in what is known here as the Great Hillbilly Migration. They all went north to Detroit to work in the auto factories during the war. Put in their 25, 30 years, and then along 1970 or so, headed on back home to the old home place out there. I'm not going to mention the town. I'm going to mention some names, local names, and you don't need to know all that. Okay, there's that is. I was born in Detroit, 1960. So by 1970, our family, we went back too. And we ended up in a 75-acre piece of property out in that area. Sounds idyllic, had a house and 75 acres, Well, no, it wasn't idyllic at all. You see, the house was a house in name. It had 4 walls and a roof, and it was basically a shack. We had no heating in the winter, save a wood stove. We had no air conditioning whatsoever. No running water, no plumbing. We bathed in the creek, did whatever we had to do to clean up, that outhouse, and what are known as big slop jars. You don't just look that up, I'll leave that to you. It was primitive, I guess would be the word for it. But I was 11 years old, and I didn't know any better. So we move on to this piece of property. Let's get to it. This property used to be a farm at one time, about 20 acres of it, give or take a little bit. But it had long since gone fallow. It was just unused, and bushes and small trees and et cetera, grown up. There was old buildings out there, an old pig pen and chicken coops, barn, just junk everywhere. So the first summer we were there, the family undertook to clean this place up. And they had cleaned and brush cut, and there was killed copperhead snakes. Man, I remember a lot of copperhead snakes. Lots of copperhead snakes. Well, one of the things out there in this field out there was a bunch of old cars. And I mean old cars. Cars today would bring some pretty good money. But back then, 1971, 72, there were just old cars, and they were in the way. And you just rusty hulks. I'm not going to mention some of them. They range in age from 1930s to about the 1950s, and I'm not going to tell you how it works. I hate comments, I don't want that. I won't mention the 19-something Model A Ford with a rumble seat. It's gone now. So, these things are in the way. Problem with these cars, most of them were pretty cool, except for one car only. It was about 1953, 54 Ford Chevy. I don't know, I was 11 years old. I don't know what it was. But in the trunk of that car, we found out very quickly, was an enormous bumblebee nest. It was, I'm not talking honeybees. I'm not talking yellow jackets. I'm talking those great big honking, green and black devilish bumblebees about a ½ inch long. They were there, and we learned very quickly, don't tamper with that car. Don't open the doors. Don't just leave that thing alone. They hated us. We didn't like them either. They were just bad. So those cars were there. Most of them we play with, do whatever, but not that car. My dad, he decided, forgive me, he decided to sell the cars for scrap. And he hired a couple of no-good guys from around that area called the Phillips Brothers. Now, these guys were just ne'er-do-wells. They were just not good people. Now, at the time, for entertainment, you couldn't stay in that house. We didn't have video games. You didn't want to be in the house in the summertime. It was just a sweat box. So we spent our time in the creek, me and my sister, my little sister there, her name was, we used to call her Shaky Tables. We spent our time in the creek, fishing, swimming, entertaining ourselves, trying to stay cool, trying not to die from heat stroke, trying not to get snake bit. It was a lot of fun for a kid, I enjoyed it, I'll tell you more if you want to hear about that later on. Right now, let's get back to the story. So, the Phillips Brothers are contracted by my father to get these cars to scrapyard and sell them for scrap for a little bit of cash, which probably a lot of cash now, but they're another story. So, one afternoon, my sister and I were left alone. Mom and Dad both worked, and during the day we were just, unsupervised and tried to entertain ourselves. So, one afternoon there, Phillips Brothers show up, and they got this old rollback truck, like a modern rollback truck. It's all fancy, and it tilts up, and the controls are down here at the bottom. This thing here, it looked like it was ready for the scrapyard too. It looked like something out of the 1930s or 40s, a rust bucket. And you have to understand, there were no controls down here. The controls were actually attached to an ancient winch line that ran off the front of this thing to tilt it up. But one of the Phillips brothers, when they got these cars out, they had to sit on top of the crash cage, I guess you'd call it. They had to sit on top and ride that thing up as it tilted up, while the other one hooked up the chains and everything. So they come there, and these are unreliable people. They're just bad people. They're not good people. And they were drunk when they got there. Very, very inebriated. I'm 11 years old. My sister's Shaky. There, she's maybe 6, 7, like that. So they get there. I don't like them. Instinctively don't like them. But they're going to get these cars. So they start getting these cars. And one of the older Phillips brothers riding up and down on this thing when they're yanking the cars up there. So I'm looking, and they're getting closer to that car. The car that you don't touch. And I thought for a moment, well, maybe you should warn them. Maybe you should warn them that there's a giant bee nest there in the trunk of that car. Don't mess with that car. But entertainment was hard to come by. The television didn't work half the time. It was all fuzzy during the day, barely worked at night, so wasn't a lot to do there. We were just bored. So I said, no, this would be pretty good. It'd be pretty good. Watch these dim bulbs, get into that car. So I ran to the house. I got my sister, Shaky. I said, hey, Shaky, come out here. We got to watch this. And Phillips boys are going to yank up that car next. So we creep around in front of the house, and both of us are peeking around the house, up here. Shaky's down here. She's a little bitty thing. So we're peeking, watching the Phillips boys get close. Back the truck up to that car. Oldest boy rides his rickety old contraption up. Youngest one gets down his back, shinnies up under the front, puts hooks on the front, up under the frame of this thing, stands back. And the older one hits the switch while he's up there, engages that winch line, gives a mighty yank on that car. And when it did, you talk about an explosion of bees. You remember when you were little, you used to watch cartoons where someone tampers with a hornet nest, bee nest, and they come out in a tornado, like a black tornado? Well, that's a real thing. That's what happened. We're watching from a distance, me and Shaky, and wow, a green-black cloud of bees exploded out of the trunk of that car and immediately attacked the younger of two Phillips boys. He's punching himself in the face, smacking his ears off. He's talking, oh my God, he's just eat up. He's covered with bumblebees. Meanwhile, the one on top of his contraption, He sees this. He jumps off from the top of this vehicle. And I'm not kidding you when I say, on the way down 12, 15 feet, his arms and legs are pumping, already in motion to hit the ground running. And when he did, he burnt rubber coming out of there. But it was too late for him, too. They got him. So these two idiots, they take off screeching, screaming, whacking at themselves, and head to the creek to jump in a deep hole. Me and Shaky had to go hide for a bit to get over the laughter, because it was extremely funny. I'm cruel now, I'm sure, but nah, you had to take what you got for entertainment there. So a bit later, these two inebriated, not quite so inebriated. Apparently bee stings may counteract a lot of alcohol. I don't know, they were more mad and furious with us and not warning them, but we played ignorance. We don't know anything about bees, there's snakes in there, man. We don't mess with that stuff. So they haul all these cars off, and so there's your bee story. I don't know what else to tell you. It's cruel now looking back on it, but it was a lot of fun watching that unfold. So there's that. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do, again, hit the like button, subscribe. Let me know if you want me to keep going. Got a lot of stories. And I appreciate y'all watching. Y'all take care. Have a good Labor Day weekend. Dusty Tables, once again, out.